Hey everyone, in today's episode, I'll discuss the cheapest suburbs worth buying in Brisbane. I'm not necessarily saying what suburbs are cheap, but I'm saying what suburbs are cheap that are actually good to buy in. So in today's episode, I'll get into a couple of things. First of all, what drives the Brisbane property market? Second of all, the minimum purchase price you need to get into the market. And then finally, the cheap suburbs, which are between $750 and $1 million, $1 and $1.5 million, $1.5 to $2 million, and $2 million plus. Let's get into it. Brisbane is driven by a few different things, not exactly the same as Sydney and Melbourne, but the things that really drive Brisbane, like to any city, are the demographics is definitely one thing, and employment centres is another. With Brisbane as well, there's a few other things that also do play a part. So your lifestyle triangle is a big thing, particularly in your inner suburbs. So the time it takes to go from work to school, home, and to lifestyle precincts and back is definitely something. School zones play a large part. There's famous cases of properties selling 20% higher simply because they are in a school zone compared to the property next door. Tranquility is another one too. So there's certain pockets of Brisbane that have excellent tranquility, like beautiful pockets, quiet streets, really good family pockets as well. Then finally, the other part you really need in Brisbane is an excess demand from a wealthy income demographic. So not all parts of Brisbane have a wealthy demographic after them. It's only really certain parts. So you need to know where these are. Look, the minimum purchase price in Brisbane now, I hate to say this though, is really about $970,000. It's really expensive. So that is suburb dependent. You're not finding something in the inner east or inner north for that. But that's a lot more expensive than my last video. So again, like I said to people, when something's going through its growth phase and you want to or need to get in the market, time is way more important than just waiting and sitting on your heels waiting for the perfect property. If something is, 8 to 9 out of 10 good and you can get in at the right price, you can, and let's say especially if it's the stuff that's not good with it, let's say it just needs a reno job or it just needs, a clean out or a wall replaced or something like that, you're much better to get in than wait, a year and let it go up another $100,000 and then you can't afford to do it. Like a wall might cost you $3,000 or $4,000 to replace rather than wait for $100,000 more in purchase price. So just consider that. But let's start between $750,000 and $1 million. So properties under $1 million. And the first suburb I have mentioned before, and luckily it is still similarly priced to when I last mentioned it, is Capera. So Capera is kind of like, I wouldn't call it the inner north, but it's definitely the northern suburbs of Brisbane, right? So it's in a kind of quite a, I'd say a kind of leafy pocket. It's past like Alderley and Ogara. It's up past them. Pretty good lifestyle pocket. Quite quiet. Mostly detached homes. Should I say it's not far a commute to the city. It probably takes you maybe 25 minutes, half an hour, and bad traffic maybe 40, but that's not too bad really. But it's a good suburb, and it's got really good schools around it. So you can see just here, obviously Mitchelton, Ferny Grove, Arana Hills, all nearby. All really good schools. It's on a train line too. Barely any of it floods either because it's a little bit too high up, which is a good thing. So definitely a suburb to consider under $1 million. Now, I did previously a few episodes ago mention, I think, Mount Gravatt from memory. Upper Mount Gravatt is a suburb of under $1 million, which you could have picked up back then, but no chance in hell can you do that anymore. So the suburb that is still, you can actually pick up under $1 million is a suburb called Chermside. Look, Chermside's probably best known for obviously having, the large centre there. And, it's one of the key northern suburbs of Brisbane. It's right on a lot of the main roads. A lot of people go to Chermside for their shopping in the north. It's also like it's quite a good family suburb. It's not too far from the CBD, but it's not too far from going north either if you wanted to go on a break. So a lot of people like it. A lot of people from Chermside will even travel to Redcliffe just to go fishing over a weekend or anything like that. But it's a good suburb for that. But also the thing about Chermside that I really like is it's actually close to a lot of the wealthy suburbs of Brisbane. So here alone, this is just off microburbs. I've just pointed out basically where Chermside is. And you'll see the obviously darker blue and teal sort of patches. That's your higher income. And Chermside is right next to all of them. So it is one of those suburbs where you can see wealthy people moving to simply because of its proximity and with the spillover effect. So that's one of the reasons you would buy in Chermside. Really, really good suburb to consider. Definitely consider it if you've got that under $1 million budget, and especially if you want to be somewhere near, shopping centres and facilities, because it's very, very good for that. Let's get into sort of one of my favourite price points of Brisbane, and I have mentioned this suburb before, and that's the $1 to $1.5 million range, and the suburb is Albion. So for those that don't know where Albion is, it is literally about 4 to 5 k's just sort of north of the CBD. It's right on the train line as well. It's one of your key suburbs. It's most famous of being the headquarters of the old Tabcorp. The old building's actually still there, which is cool to see actually. But there's a few things going on in Albion. It's actually that old dog track and everything's actually going to be a part of the Olympics in 2032, and the whole actual CBD area, or not CBD, but the main train area is going to be upgraded. So there's a whole thing called the Albion Exchange going in there, massive apartments, and a lot of also businesses are moving into there. So quite a good suburb for that, and very easy to, get into the CBD. There's actually a bike path that runs in. It's 2 stops to Fortitude Valley, 3 to Brisbane Central, which is awesome. I don't think you can find much like that anyway, but Albion really is really cheap in a really expensive pocket. So Albion is the suburb that's just kind of like the sort of long-shaped suburb right next, just to the left of Ascot and Hamilton. That's Albion. So you can see there alone, you've got Ascot, Hamilton and Clayfield, which are basically your old money suburbs of Brisbane neighbouring it. You've got then Wooloowin to the north, and obviously Windsor just to the west. Windsor's more expensive than it too. But Albion, you've got incredible income as well, and you're not going to find anything this cheap. It's just insane how cheap this is. So yeah, it's a really, really good suburb for the area of Brisbane that it's in. And yeah, you can't get much better than that for that price, but you're still picking them up for, $1.3 million. So very rare to be 4 or 5 k's from the CBD. Another suburb I want to mention is the suburb of Newmarket. I've mentioned it previously. I'm going to mention it again because it's still, Newmarket's about 1.4 to 1.5 million, a bit more expensive than Albion, but it occupies such a good area. It's in the inner north, really good sort of town centre in Newmarket, quite walkable, right on the train line, pretty close to CBD. Really easy to get in the Suncorp Stadium if you like watching, footy or anything like that too. Yeah, you can't go too wrong in Newmarket. It's such a good suburb. Newmarket alone as well, obviously you've got the city centre. It's close to obviously the Hurston Medical Precinct too, but it's very well located to a lot of good schools. So, you can see all the state schools here. So these are just your public schools, but it's also quite close to Brisbane Girls and Brisbane Grammar School, just in nearby Spring Hill, pretty much just straight down the road. And then the university's just, at Kelvin Grove, so literally the neighbouring suburb to the south towards the city. So can't go wrong with Newmarket. Really, really good suburb to buy, and definitely one I'd consider, and really, really like the suburb. Can't go wrong there. It's definitely got growth left in the cycle as well. So definitely consider Newmarket in Brisbane for $1 to $1.5 million. Let's get into $1.5 to $2 million. And the suburb I'm going to mention first of all is Norman Park. Look, Norman Park is one of my favourite suburbs in Brisbane. It happens to only be about 4 or so k's from the CBD. Right next to East Brisbane, right next to Seven Hills and Hawthorn. Really, really good pocket. Great family suburb, really. But this is an example of what it looks like. But Norman Park alone is probably one of the best family suburbs in all of Brisbane. A lot of tree-lined streets, a lot of parks, a lot of streets also, especially in the back part of Norman Park, that barely any of it really floods actually as well. But also, great schools nearby, great facilities, great income, everything basically you've got there, and the location is just insane. So this is just a sort of overhead. So yes, some parts of Norman Park actually front the river, which is awesome. You've got some places there that sell for $8 and $10 million, believe it or not. But it's actually got a train line stop as well, right near Wollongabba, right near Cannon Hill, right near the CBD, not far from Fortitude Valley either, near all the jobs. You can see all the parks and recreation centres around it. You got Churchie obviously nearby, quite a good school there. So, really, really good location. Definitely one to consider for everyone. Another suburb I want to mention, and yes, it happens to be right next to Norman Park, is the suburb of Seven Hills. And when I say Seven Hills, I'm not talking about the Seven Hills in Sydney. Do not buy there, by the way, if you have the money to, because it's a rip-off for what you could buy elsewhere. But anyway, Seven Hills in Brisbane is just next to Norman Park, just on the, obviously, hillside of Norman Park. And this is what a lot of the houses in Seven Hills look like. So you can see here, modern, updated, with a lot of pools. It's very common in Seven Hills. But the best thing about Seven Hills is actually the demographics. It's got one of the best in the whole country. So here's your demographics. This is just from the 2021 census. Median weekly household income, $2,888. Median monthly mortgage repayments, $2,700 a month. So they earn more a week than they do have to pay mortgage payments in a month. So obviously everyone knows the 30% rule, 30% of gross income to mortgage. This is less than 25%. So plenty of income here for that to continue going up. So really good suburb for that. I'm telling you, it's going to be one of the better performers in the later stages of the Brisbane cycle as well, just simply because of these demographics. Let's get to the top end of Brisbane, and this is basically your very best suburbs of Brisbane. There's not many suburbs that are really genuinely above 2 million, but I'm going to first of all get into probably my favourite suburb of all of Brisbane. That's New Farm. This is just an overhead of New Farm. New Farm's just to the right, by the way, so you can see the kind of boardwalk sort of running track along the Brisbane River there. Well known throughout basically everyone in Brisbane, and most people that have been to Brisbane have seen it, especially from Story Bridge. But it probably occupies the best pocket of all of Brisbane. Like, not much of it floods, only really down by the park it floods. That's about it. But really, really beautiful. And like, I think it's genuinely the best suburb in all of Brisbane. And this is just an article from Domain. New Farm, why even the pickiest home buyers call this suburb home. And that's the truth of it. Like, not many people really leave New Farm, and when a property in the right area comes up to market, like, it sells like wildfire. It is insane how quickly it sells. Not only that's true, but you'll find most homes that actually are for sale, it'll say like first time sold in like 30 years, first time in 40 years. It's very similar to kind of your Sydney eastern suburbs, in Melbourne inner east as well, in terms of hold period. So definitely something you consider there as well. Finally, let's close out with the final suburb I want to mention, and that suburb is Hawthorn. Straight across from New Farm, Hawthorn does front the river. Very upmarket suburb, very good waterfront properties in this suburb too. Some are selling for above 15 million, which in Brisbane, I know it doesn't sound like much to people from Sydney or some parts of Melbourne, but for Brisbane, that's very expensive. So Hawthorn is there, but it's got a village lifestyle as well, although being so affluent. So another Domain article just here, Hawthorn, the Brisbane suburb, offering an urban village lifestyle in the city. That's basically exactly what it is, and it's such a good suburb. I mean, longer term, it's going to do well too. Wouldn't surprise me if this suburb goes above 2.5 million. It's only in the low twos now, but there's definitely some growth left there. Great income demographics, great location, can't go wrong here. Hawthorn's another good suburb above 2 million. Getting towards the end of this episode, just want to thank everyone for watching as well, and please subscribe to this channel. But for people serious, please reach out to me, especially if you're serious about buying an investment or just getting into the market, even an owner occupier. Please reach out to me. My details are below. And if you're really serious about long-term investing and actually getting a massive property portfolio, please sign up to Premier Properties. It's properties with above 13% total return. That is your 30-year CoreLogic capital growth plus your immediate gross rental yield. The reason I aim for that is because I want the proportion of your capital growth to be a large percentage of the total return. And the reason is because of your internal rate of return longer term. Capital growth will do between 7 and 10% long term in the best suburbs, and yield will only generally do between 3 and 4% growth. Now, because of this, what will happen over the long term is yield will slide down as growth goes up. But that's what you want, because yield is a percentage of the asset value. And your internal rate of return will actually be higher with a higher percentage of capital growth, because that doesn't slide down, but yield does. And what proves it is the average house in Australia rents between $650 and $700 a week at the moment, whereas the average Whereas the average, if it were 7 to 10% on yield, would be $2,500 to $3,000 a week, and it's just not the case. So that's why I do it that way. Sign up to Premier Properties. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day, everyone. Cheers.